Welcome, friends, to this time of worship. Welcome to first-time viewers, to relative newcomers, to our faith and longtime members of this congregation. How good it is to gather virtually across the interweb. I am Joan DeArtemis, the Intern Minister at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Wellesley Hills, and I extend a warm welcome to everyone watching this broadcast of this Sunday service, either through the UU Wellesley Hills website or our Facebook page. We are incredibly grateful to our remote participants who continuously widen the reach of this beloved community. Whether you are feeling jubilant or heartbroken, frightened or courageous, you belong with us. May all of us find peace in this hour. Whoever you are, wherever you find yourself on your personal journey, whatever the sources of your faith, we are glad to have you with us today as we hold our virtual worship service. Welcome, everyone.
In greening lands begins the song, which deep in human hearts is strong. In cheerful strings your voices raise, to fill the whole spring world with praise.
Good morning. I am Acting Director of Educational and Family Ministries, Michael Packard. At UU Wellesley Hills, we have celebrating 150 years of gathering in community. For generations, we have been honoring our Jewish and Christian roots and reaching out to know the great truths found in other religious expressions. Please know that for this virtual worship, you can download the order of service from this Sunday page on our website. Be sure to follow UU Wellesley Hills on our social media outlets to keep current on our many happenings. Always feel free to post any news you have for this community in our Facebook group share. All weekly events, including our casual chat, tech talk, midweek reflection, musical meditation, all ages activity, bedtime stories, and coffee circle, can be accessed online. You will find the links for all those listed in the monthly calendar on our website. Immediately following this service, we will hold our virtual fellowship hour in Zoom, where I will host. Each Sunday, we take a few moments to recognize some of our many volunteers. Today, we want to thank the fine volunteers who make up the Standing Committee at UU Wellesley Hills. They held a special meeting of the congregation early this morning and have been working valiantly for the greater good for the church during our current campus closure. This year, we are building beloved community as part of our 2019-2020 Touchstones project. And in April, the touchstone is the divine. God, to me, it seems, is a verb, not a noun, proper or improper, declares Richard Buckminster Fuller. How did God figure in your speech? We encourage you to join a monthly Touchstone group if you have not already done so. Note that while the church campus is closed, all our Touchstone groups will be meeting virtually. Now, we invite those who are watching the premiere broadcast of our worship service on our UU Wellesley Hills Facebook page to take a moment, announce yourself in the audience, and greet one another in this electronic community of ours.
Here we are in our circle again, a circle of vision and reflection, a forum for deciding and empowering. Here we are at the base of another bridge, another space spanning the shores of today and tomorrow, beckoning us to cross the chasm one day at a time. Here we are, gathered again at the cusp of the future, at the boundary that holds community together. We are here in a circle of love and trust, brought to this moment by a series of choices and promises, by hope and gratitude, by our own shadows faced and befriended. With a servant's heart and a leader's listening, with a parent's love truer than all our inner trembling, let us model the health we seek for all and lean into community. Somewhere out there, all we dream is possible. Somewhere in here, we are sowing the seeds. These are the words of the Reverend Sherry Woodbury. Let us worship together. The flaming chalice is a shining symbol of our Unitarian Universalist commitments. The words for our chalice lighting are printed in our order of service for this Sunday. If you have a chalice at hand at home, you may want to light yours now. We light these chalices to illuminate our faithful way forward as an inspirational community of hope. Together, we seek spiritual growth. We strive for just and responsible action. We dedicate ourselves to leading lives of compassion and purpose. Knowing how we have been blessed, we choose to bless the world.
Good morning, I'm Susie Kirtran, Director of Music at UU Wellesley Hills. Please join me in singing our opening hymn, All Whose Boast It Is.
majestic, powerful, and free, a symbol of freedom. But is it the king of the birds? Fly with me back to a time where the earth was new. All the birds had gathered one bright, beautiful morning. There was the cockatoo, the macaw, the flamingo, the robin, the owl, the blue jay, and on and on. The great eagle stood on a precipice to address all of the birds. The lion, we know, is the king of all that dwell on the land. But ought a land dweller be the leader of the birds in the sky? I think not. We should choose our own leader. There was much chirping and tweeting in response to that. The eagle continued. I think the leader should be like a king. I am the bird of royal bearing. I think I should be our leader and king. There was some more chirping and tweeting, although not as vigorous as before. Another voice spoke up. You are majestic, that is true, but I, owl, have the largest eyes, and I can see everything that happens. Also, I am known as being very wise, and a king should be wise when questions arise. Now the birds were chirping and tweeting against each other, for now they had two candidates. Some even offered a third candidate, the steppe buzzard. When all the birds were starting to take sides, a smaller bird chirped up. I think I should be king. Elect me, said the tiny warbler. Well, many of the birds broke out into laughter. Such a small bird as their leader seemed a ridiculous idea. You could not possibly be chosen as a leader of the birds, said the large eagle. You are not majestic or powerful. You are not wise. You're certainly not imposing. I am as good as any of you have promised to be, said the warbler. I think I should be given a chance to lead and be the king. Well, he certainly has courage, said one bird. The great eagle said, let us have a contest. All the birds agreed to that. When the next full moon comes and the sun has set on the top of the mountain, all the birds will fly high in the sky, maybe all the way to touch where the sky begins. Whoever can fly the highest will be our leader and our true king. The birds agreed to this, and when the day came, they all met once again, even the tiny warbler, who had a plan. See, the warbler was very small, and he decided he would tuck himself right under the wing of the eagle without the eagle noticing he was there. This way, the warbler will prove his merit to be king. The time arrived, and all the birds were off like a shot, up in the air. Soon, the smallest birds had to bow out quickly, for their wings could not carry them as high as the larger birds. And after not long and much work, there were just 3 birds left: the eagle, the owl, and the steppe buzzard. They climbed and climbed, worked very hard. Finally, the owl had to bow out and resign himself to go back to the earth. Then it was just the eagle and the buzzard, and soon the buzzard bowed out as well. The eagle, proud of himself, flew just a little bit higher, said, "Ha ha, I have won. I should be the true king." Then this tiny warbler flew out from under his wing. "Not so fast, you're not king yet." The eagle was exhausted and could not follow, and the warbler flew up higher. "I win, I am the king," said the warbler. But when he looked down at all the birds, they were not in agreement. In fact, they thought he should be punished for his trickery. So when the warbler returned to the earth, he darted in the first hole he could find, an evacuated snake hole. The birds wanted to catch him, but they couldn't get him in there. So they put the owl to stand guard. Day and night, the owl waited until the bird would come out and face consequences for his actions. After a while, the owl's eye got tired, and the other one, and the owl fell asleep. That was the warbler's chance. He shot out and went deep into the forest, flitting about. And to this day, you can find the warbler going from place to place, never staying too long for fear of being caught, and always saying, "I am king, I am king." And to this day, the birds are still undecided on who, in fact, is their king.
Each Sunday, this congregation collects a weekly offering as part of its larger spiritual practice of generosity. This morning, UU Wellesley Hills will be collecting donations to support Renewal House, which is the domestic violence shelter run by the UU Urban Ministry. To allow for social distancing during the COVID-19 crisis, the 4 families in residence at Renewal House have been moved to alternative housing where they can live safely and independently. Our plate collection will help the urban ministry cover the resulting increase in costs. During the weeks that we will have virtual worship, all donations will be taken electronically. Visit our website and go to the online giving page that will allow you to make online payments using Breeze. Once there, be sure to select plate collection from the drop-down menu. It takes maybe a couple of minutes at most, so we invite you to donate now. Please donate generously as you can in support of our partners at the UU Urban Ministry. Spirit of life, free, wild, swift, and silent. You make us want to run through the woods. You keep us at the ready, ready to brave the sharp and the deadly. Far-seeing light, you make us keen of eye and strong of arm. May we see what is ever true. May we ever speak the truth with single purpose. Spirit of love, we pray to you to do what is needful. May my eyes be clear. May my hand be ready. May my heart be pure to do good and to do no harm. May we always act with compassion. We are grateful, Spirit of life, for the food on our table. We are grateful, Spirit of life, for the time we spend in our home or in the wood, hearing the silence. We are grateful, Spirit of life, for the time we spend alive. Grant that we take on this work with honest intent. Grant that we feel the weight of what we do. Grant that we honor the lives that feed us. Spirit of life, of light, and of love, we pray to you. Namaste, shalom, amen, and blessed be. With these words in our hearts now and on our minds and in our hearts, let us enter into the sacred stillness of shared silence, listening for wisdom within. Ours is a spiritual community where we find and forge connection. We trust in the strength of our mutual support, knowing how it has sustained us day after day, year after year. We heed its call to build beloved community. Today we hold in the light anyone who has been touched by COVID-19, whether that be mentally or physically, or emotionally or financially or spiritually. And we know this literally includes everyone living on the planet. And we lift up everyone who gets up every morning and just keeps doing what you do to get us through this, including, of course, the healthcare workers and the first responders and the grocers and the truckers. But also we recognize that on some level, we are all essential as we just show up for one another and we do the very best that we can do every single day to get through this together. And again, this literally includes everyone living on the planet. Now we invite you to recall the names of persons or places that you are holding in your hearts, either as a source of concern or a cause for celebration. If you have candles at home, you may want to light one for your collective joys and another for your collective sorrows. As you feel moved, you may share the names of those persons or places by typing them into our Facebook page. And these will be read aloud at the next Sunday morning, but will be held in all of our hearts and thoughts until then. This morning, we name Chris Lilly, Donna Tambascio, Marty and Camilla, Robin Bossert, Laura and Frank Pate, Sally and Rick Watts, Emily Senecal Miller, Liz Becker and Ben Unger, Andy Luger, the surviving family and friends of Donald Lanou, the surviving family and friends of Paul Setsko, the surviving family of friends and friends of Gersel Henry, Eve Slater, Kevin Childress, and millions of other New Yorkers. These names have been heard and honored together in this community. Alongside these, we know are certain joys and sorrows that remain private and unspoken this hour. Those too have a rightful place here. May fellow feeling encourage each of us toward ever more compassionate living. Our kindred lamps remind us that we are all kindred souls. We are never alone in the human condition. There is a love that cares for us all. Now please join us in our sung meditation on breathing.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Our responsive reading this morning is Impassioned Clay by Ralph N. Helverson. You can read along with us on the words on your screen. Deep in ourselves resides the religious impulse.
Out of passions of our clay it arises.
We have religion when we stop deluding ourselves that we are self-sufficient, self-sustaining, or self-derived.
We have religion when we hold some hope beyond the present, some self-respect beyond our failures.
We have religion when our hearts are capable of leaping up at beauty, when our nerves are edged by some dream in the heart.
We have religion when we have an abiding gratitude for all that we have received.
We have religion when we look upon people with all their failings and still find in them good. When we look beyond people to the grandeur in nature and to the purpose in our own heart.
We have religion when we have done all that we can and then in confidence entrust ourselves to the life that is larger than ourselves. inside the United States is a little odd. Christianity, in one form or another, appears to be the most mainstream faith, but with numerous other spiritual beliefs living and thriving alongside of it. Most Americans report that their faith performs an extremely vital role in their lives, with an even larger number saying that it is crucial to their identities, even though the percentage of those that identify as none is steadily growing at the same rate that the Christian identity is declining. In addition, our attitudes around religion are distinctive among other established nations. If you go to the Pew Research Center website and do a search for religiosity in the US, you will find a fascinating graph. This graph compares on one axis the wealth of countries based on their 2015 per capita gross domestic product. And on the other axis, you will find a comparison of people, of a comparison of religiosity based on the number of people who say they pray every day. And when you look at this graph, the relationship of relative wealth of a country and their level of religiosity, it appears that there is a direct relationship. I mean, at the top, you see the poorest countries, countries like Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Senegal, topping the chart at well over 85% of the people who pray every single day. And then there is this nice, predictable, comforting slope of the number of people who pray drops as wealth goes up, with the wealthiest countries like Norway, Switzerland, and Ireland, reporting less than 20% of their citizens that pray. Now, there's a couple of outliers, like, for example, China, who is apparently the least religious country surveyed, and also one of the poorest. But one wonders if this is influenced by the fact that religious expression there is very tightly controlled by the government. But even so, they appear on the graph as part of that nice, predictable slope. And then there's the United States, which stands, boom, all by itself, completely away from the rest of the pack. And there is nothing anywhere near it. Of the 102 countries surveyed, the United States of America is the only country to have both an above average GDP and an above average frequency of daily prayer. The US stands out like someone who showed up dressed in a tuxedo for a pool party. Wealth-wise, we fall somewhere in between Ireland and Switzerland, but in religiosity, we fall between Bolivia and South Africa. To someone who studies the relationship between religion and society as an academic discipline, this is fascinating. Why is this happening? Is it because as a country, we're still relatively new, or maybe because we have freedom of religion encoded predominantly in our Constitution? Or perhaps it has to do with the fact that religion in this capitalist country is treated legally as a nonprofit business. There could be a lot of reasons, but for me, this was something that once seen, I simply could not unsee. Now, if you're watching this service today, you probably identify as a Unitarian Universalist, or at least are considering Unitarian Universalism as a religious affiliation. But in addition to that, you probably also have some sort of religious identity. In 2018, the Pew Research Center did another survey. And in this one, they grouped people by religious expression, rather than religion or religious denomination. And in this one, they group people as highly religious, somewhat religious, or non-religious. And no surprise, most Americans, 71%, identified as highly religious or somewhat religious. With the rest, the non-religious, 29%, falling into two categories of either religious resistors or solidly secular. However, when the enterprising editors of UU World decided to do their own survey via Facebook, using the same questions, the same exact questions, to Unitarian Universalists, nearly 70% of the UUs surveyed fell into one of the non-religious categories. And yet UUs as a group are extremely likely to regularly attend church, while at the same time vastly less likely to pray. So in all the world, the United States breaks all the rules, and us UUs break them even further. The fact is, no matter where one looks, what country or what time period, one can always see how religion has influenced every aspect of the culture. We can see it in our politics, in our economies, our global trends, even our fashion choices. Sometimes we know it. Sometimes it's obvious to us, like when we see a woman wearing hijab or a Sikh in a turban. But if you ask yourself right now, if what you're wearing is influenced by your religious identification, and then change the question slightly and ask, how is what you are wearing influenced by your religious identification? You will see that there is an answer, no matter how you see yourself. Most religions have a creation myth that says that humans were created in the image of the divine. The opposite is most likely true. How we experience divinity is how we experience ourselves. Religious expression develops in a culture. And when I use the word religion, I am using it in the broadest sense, because atheists, agnostics, and humanists are also expressing a religious impulse. Religious expression usually develops in an organic, almost democratic sort of way. One can think of religion in the same way as one can think of technology. We have all seen when a new technology comes along, sometimes it is adopted and sometimes it's not. And believe it or not, it usually just comes down to whether the technology or the religion works for people, whether it is useful, whether it makes life better. Over time, religious expressions change as cultures change. There was a time in the ancient past when many cultures practiced the ritual sacrifice of humans. Then at some point, the practice was stopped, but animal sacrifice continued, and it still does even today in many places. But now nearly everyone in modern times equates human sacrifice with the most extreme forms of barbarism, and animal sacrifice as a close second. And yet, the basic idea is of the willingness to sacrifice oneself for the good of others is often viewed favorably as the highest heroism in the extreme. In his 1952 book, Answer to Job, Carl Jung wrote, The fact that religious statements frequently conflict with the observed physical phenomenon proves that, in contrast to physical perception, the spirit is autonomous, and that psychic experience is, to a certain extent, independent of physical data. The psyche is an autonomous factor, and religious statements are psychic confessions, which in the last resort are based on unconscious, i.e., on transcendental processes. These processes are not accessible to physical perception, but demonstrate their existence through the confessions of the psyche. That is why, whenever we speak of religious contents, we move in a world of images that point to something ineffable. Put another way, one does not have to believe in an actual supernatural supreme being to have, in a very deep and moving way, a sense of the sacred. And maybe, just maybe, you are one of the many Unitarian Universalists who believe that belief in a deity is a fantasy, or a fantasy at best, or at worst, a lie. And that's okay. But I would like to leave you now with the words of Terry Pratchett from the end of Hogfather. Now, the scene here is a conversation between Death, personified, and his granddaughter named Susan. "All right," said Susan, "I'm not stupid. You're saying humans need fantasies to make life bearable." Death replies, "Really? As if it was some kind of pink pill? No, humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape." Susan replies, "Two fairies, hogfathers, little." Death interrupts her. "Yes, as practice, you have to start out learning to believe the little lies." Susan says, "So we can believe the big ones?" Death replies, "Yes, justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing." Susan exclaims, "They're not the same at all." And Death says, "You think so? Then take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve, and then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy." And yet, Death waved a hand, and yet you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there is some rightness in the universe by which it may be judged. And Susan replied, "Yes, but people have got to believe that, or what's the point?" And Death replied, "My point, exactly." Now join us for our final hymn.
Oh, public fame or private ear, who have their lives from rumors freed, whose conscience is their strong retreat, whose state no flattery can feed, no ruin make oppressors great.
Now that our worship this morning is concluding, we extinguish our individual chalices. Our closing words are printed in the Sunday order of service. Extinguishing this flame, which has burned bright in our midst, we revere that which has been kindled within each one of us. Warmth of community, the light of truth, a perpetual spark of hope. Knowing abundant blessing, we choose to bless the world. May the quality of each of our lives be our benediction and a blessing to all that we touch. There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There is too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth and do that which calls to us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with grace of divine presence every day.
This is the truth that passes understanding. This is the joy to all forever free. Life springs from death and shatters every fetter, and winter turns to spring eternally.
Thank you all.